The truth is, if all you've ever done is leased beats online, like random beats online, you've never worked with a producer for real. I just need to talk about this. I had a thought the other day just thinking about why people can't find a sound or why their projects don't sound like a cohesive body of work. The truth is, if all you've ever done is leased beats online, like random beats online, you've never worked with a producer for real. And, there's this long debate about what a producer is, who's a producer, are beat makers producers? And in a sense, yes, but in a sense, no. For instance, this isn't a diss to anybody that makes YouTube beats. Or lease beats and stuff online. Like, there's a thriving community of people that do that, and that's cool. And it allows people to connect with artists all over the world. So that's a cool thing. But when there's the next level of artistry is finding your sound. Yes, a lot of people can just rap on beats, but to work with a producer means a whole different thing. Whenever I'm in the studio with somebody for the first time and I know that we're doing production stuff and the whole process, the first 30 minutes or so we're just talking, and what I'm trying to get from that conversation is what are they like, what have they been through, what do they want to talk about, like what's their message, what's their vibe. I can almost hear the tone in their voice when we're talking, like I'm listening to some tone or frequency in their voice. And usually within that, after that 30 minutes, I can get on that keyboard or whatever I'm using, and I'm feeling the vibe of that person. And sometimes it's totally different from anything that they've ever done because they've never worked with a producer. They might have songs out, they might be successful, but they've never sat in a session and talked to somebody and felt a vibe, and they created fresh from scratch from that vibe, from that conversation. It opens up a whole nother side. I've seen it so many times where somebody's like, I've never done a record like this, or I've never sounded like this. That is the biggest difference in working with a producer versus just buying beats. We're in a time where if you look at the credits on a major artist's album, right, or single, most times there's multiple producers. And that's not to say like all these guys are making the beat necessarily, right? Like you take like a Tricky Stewart or a Hitmaker or people like that, or go all the way back to like a Quincy Jones or somebody like that, right? They might not have necessarily made the beat, right? In the older times, like with the Quincy Jones times, he was directing a band, so he might not be the person physically playing the drums, he might not be the person physically playing the keys, but he might be the guy that says, oh no, let's take it from the top and let's play this part like this, and strings, you chill out a little bit in the back. Or he's talking to Michael Jackson or somebody, he's like, yeah, Michael, try singing it like this. And we've heard the stories of, Michael not wanting to sing a part a certain way, but Quincy Jones is like, no, you got to sing it like this. Just trust me, sing it like this. A lot of artists have not had that experience of working with someone and trusting someone. A lot of beginner artists or like, indie artists, that they may be confident in their sound, right, or what they've done that's gotten them to some point, but there's always room to grow. You know what I mean? Like there's always room for change and interpretation and all of that. But usually after we do one song, and we'll do it their way first, I'll not only do I produce, but I also engineer, right? And I feel like being a great engineer leads to you possibly being a great producer as well. Because even when I'm recording someone on someone else's beat or a beat that they found or whatever the case is, I'm going to tell them certain things that as a producer I would want to hear them do. And as an engineer, I'm thinking, oh, I'm gonna have them stack this part, or let's add some harmonies here, or let's add some ad libs here, or let's take these ad libs out, let's make the verse shorter and move the hook up and move the beat around and add, take things out of the beat and stuff like that. All of that is an engineer also being a producer. So in the definition of producer, I've produced a lot of songs that I didn't necessarily make the beat, but I didn't ask for credit on those songs, because it wasn't even that type of situation. But like, technically I'm producing them. I've taken a lot of artists from just starting out and they coming from recording at their homeboy's house, or just studios where somebody's just pressing record and letting them do whatever, to directing them and coaching them. And most people, once I start giving them some advice and telling them, coaching them a little bit, and they start hearing the record come together, the trust is there. Very few, but there's been some people that are resistant to it, like, nah, I'm gonna do it my way. And then I just be in engineer mode, right? But as I've grown through my career, I've moved away from those type of sessions, and production is the heart or the root of me being in the studio with someone or working with someone. It's for me to be the producer, but I also can record them and I can mix it and do the whole thing. So there's a certain level of value that comes with that, and there's a different price for that. Like, no, it's not going to be the $25 to use a beat. It's not going to be that, because I'm not only going to make you something from scratch or find you a beat that I have where you may be talking and you may say, oh, I want to do a song like this or like that, or with this type of vibe, you got anything? And then I could just think of beats sometimes, and I have no idea how this happens, but just pull up a beat and it just so happens to fit what they're doing. Or if someone sends me a cappella or a verse, or just some type of a hook or something, some type of idea, melody, and then I make something to go with that, I can see it when especially if we're in person and they're hearing it for the first time when I play what I made for them. There's a different type of light bulb that goes off in their head, like, wow, this is exactly the fit, or this is better than I imagined it could be. But that's because it wasn't restricted to what the online beat stores and YouTube type beats and stuff have kind of squeezed people into, where it's like, in order for a type beat to be appealing, it has to be a Little Baby type beat, or a Moneybagg Yo type beat, or a whoever, right, to be appealing to get people to listen, right? But in doing that, it's almost like you're imitating whatever the last sound that artist put together. And so you're not chasing your own, you're not building your own sound. And that in itself is a massive disservice to you as an artist, for yourself. Yeah, it's easy to mimic or use the guide, like, oh, this is a Moneybagg type beat, so I know a Moneybagg type flow would work on this. And this could be true, but then later on you hear, when we play it back for people, they're like, oh man, that sounds like some Moneybagg, like, they'll compare you to somebody else. That's not the goal of true artistry. You know what I'm saying? Like, you want to make your own sound. yes, inspiration comes from everywhere, you know, but inspiration is different from imitation. That's a bar. Why artists like kind of shy away from this, and I've seen this countless times too, where when you tell them that price, if you're used to just getting your beats online and leasing them for $25, $30, $40, sometimes people pay the premium lease for $100, whatever it is, right? They think that is the price of a beat. That is the price of that market of beat, right? And you got to know what you're getting with that. You're getting, unless you buy the exclusive rights, you're getting a beat that anybody else that hears and sees and pays for that beat, or just steals that beat off YouTube. There are other people that have the same beat. So you run the risk of someone else's song being bigger than yours. And that's not to shame anybody, but doesn't that devalue what you get? It's not even yours. You're just paying to use it. And 9 times out of 10, those guys don't even care about like royalties and stuff like that, because, especially in the streaming era, there's not much money being made on the back end to go through all the hoops and jumps to track down all of that stuff. If 1,000 people leased a beat, half those people probably didn't even put the song out. And then the other half, they're getting their 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 streams, and we're talking dollars and pennies, so a lot of times they're playing the volume game of just try to get as many people to lease this beat as possible. To really be taken seriously as an artist today, you need your own sound. You need your beat that no one else has. But that comes with exclusivity, and that comes with a premium price tag if you want to be produced. It requires a lot of trust, because if you're giving somebody $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever the price is, you're trusting that this producer is going to get you the best result, right? And that comes with trust and building trust. But it's worth it in the end, because you are building something that is yours. You're painting on your canvas. You're not painting over a canvas that's been painted on 1,000 times. And we've even seen big records. There was a huge record back in the day with Travis Porter and Roscoe Dash and those guys, All the Way Turned Up, right? It was off a SoundClick beat, which was like BeatStars back then. And when the song blew up, I don't know the specifics of why, but they had to remake the beat to get an original beat. And when we're talking about now, we have content ID and stuff like that. So if somebody puts the song out and copyrights it and puts content ID on it, any other song that uses that beat is going to get a copyright strike. So now you've paid that $25, $75, $150 or whatever, and your song gets taken down. So now you've wasted that money. And say you've done that a number of times, you've spent $1,000, and so getting to that point, and this is for producers and artists. Artists need to understand where the producers are coming from, and the producers need to understand where the artists are coming from. But also within the producer umbrella, just understand that there are some people that just make beats and they don't get in the studio and they don't know the first thing about recording somebody or putting a song together, but they can make some fire beats, and that's cool. But that's why you see on the Kendricks and the Drakes and people like that on those album credits, somebody might have sent in a beat and then there were some tweaks along the way to make it fit sonically into what the project was, right? You may see one producer name across all the tracks. In Drake's case, you see 40. 40's on all the tracks. He didn't make all the beats, He made some of them, but some of them were ideas that came from a beat maker. They sent it in, and then they said, oh, this is good. Now let's shape it to what we're doing, or add some instruments to make it lead into the next song, or to add this layer that we need, because as is, it's a fire beat, but it's not a song yet, and we're gonna make it a song now. And that's how that whole thing works. So in closing, how does this get fixed, or what's the shift that needs to happen? I think if artists made fewer records, like if you're a beginner artist, or you're on the local rise or regional rise, you don't need 100 songs to release. Like, yeah, sure, get your reps in and make as many songs as possible, but fewer songs with one producer. Lock in with that producer, and you'd be surprised. Even people don't want to get into the pricing game and the negotiation stuff, the back and forth. I think if artists were just upfront and said, hey, I'm willing to pay $500 per beat, or $1,000 for a beat and a mix, or in a set, whatever. If they offered a price, I bet you would get better beats in your emails. And if you said that they got to be exclusive, like they got to be one of one, not on your BeatStars page, and not on YouTube, and not like no one's heard these, add some stipulations, you would get some fire beats, and then you could narrow it down, really lock in with someone. But if you make fewer records to where you're concentrating on each song, because all it takes is one song to really skyrocket you, right, as an artist or producer. Fewer records, one producer, somebody that you can, when I say producer, a real producer, and bonus if that producer is also an engineer, or can be there when you're recording these songs to kind of coach you and guide you and bounce ideas off one another through in a session. It leads to a clearer end goal. It leads to more intentional sessions, which ultimately saves you money, because you're not spending hundreds and hundreds and hundreds on all these countless hours in the studio where you're coming out with mediocre songs. You're actually going to the studio. You've probably, either worked on the song prior to getting to the studio, or you guys have been back and forth talking about ideas of what it could be and shaping it that way. And then when you get into the studio, you're there to work. You're there to get to business. And you might go to the studio and just go there and say, all right, pull up some beats on YouTube. You'll spend an hour to, 30 minutes just listening to stuff, type beats, this and that, and finally pick one that's like decent enough. And then you go in there and freestyle. At the end of a 3 or 4 hour session, all you got is a freestyle that you're not really talking about nothing, or, say it didn't come out right. Or say you did come out with something, and then you find out that beat's no longer for sale, or, that beat, a million people didn't use that beat. One producer relationship is really all you need, and that beats 100 random songs. One intentional record can do it for you. So a word to, beat makers and upcoming producers, you don't want to spread yourself too thin. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to, it's not necessarily a good thing to have your sound all over the place, or have no control over who's rapping on your beats and stuff like that. Like, what if somebody takes one of your beats and makes something really offensive, or makes a terrible song, or it's so many different scenarios that can happen with that, right? You got no control over that, because the beat's just out there in the in the mix of all of that noise, right? But hone your skills. You know what I mean? Have this in your mind. I'm making this beat. I make beats, but I want my beats to be songs. So I need to learn how to produce a song. And at the beginner level, if you got a rapper friend, a rapper homeboy, whatever, work with that person. Don't sell those, don't lease those beats to other people. Like, lock in with them and make some beats, and you guys can meet at that same level. But beginner artists, don't think that you're going to get in the room with a seasoned producer and think that they're going to bring you to their level and say, oh, I'm gonna give you this and we'll just rock for like, no, what you're paying for is all that gap. You're paying for that gap of knowledge, experience, all of that, right? So yes, it's gonna cost you more, but look at the level that you jump up to, as opposed to if you're meeting somebody right where you are, that's you guys can grow together, right? But if you want to work with a established producer and a professional producer, you got to get up to their level. I think that's a good analogy of how to put that. But everybody doesn't need this. Everybody's not seeking that. Like, some people just like to go to the studio and just see what they got, and just before they even really spend some big bread, right? Because it does cost. But if you want records that compete, and you want to make a real name for yourself, and you want to grow as an artist, working with a producer is the key. I hope that helps somebody out there to understand, that yes, there is a difference between beat makers and producers, and artists know the level of producer you're talking to, and don't expect someone that's higher than you to give you something, hand you something. You need to meet them where they are, and then you never know what can blossom from a relationship after doing business. Do good business first. Like, that's number one. But yeah, I hope this helps somebody. Follow the channel, subscribe, turn on notifications and stuff, because we're going to get more into this type of content, and I'm going to share more of these type of perspectives from my experiences through being in the music game for almost 15 years now. Well, probably more than that. But yeah, man, like, subscribe. Till the next one. Peace.